Nicholas Davis, the World Economic Forum is launching today the scenario report about Saudi Arabia. Why did we choose Saudi Arabia?
Well, Matthias, there was a lot of interest in the Gulf region in general from our members beginning of last year. And from that, we developed a series of scenarios on the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. Having launched those in Jordan this year at our annual meeting in the Middle East, we decided to go on and do some more work and look in depth at Saudi Arabia. The reason being that Saudi is the largest economy in the Gulf region, and in particular it has a huge amount of influence in how the region will develop, both in terms of its economics and in terms of its stability.
So what are the main findings of the report?
Well, first of all, I think the report really underlined how uncertain the future is for the region as a whole, for the Middle East and for the Gulf region in particular. There are a huge amount of what we call critical uncertainties, of major factors that could influence the future one way or another. In particular, we're talking about issues such as the way in which stability could go with US relations with Iran, but also in terms of the regional integration that is occurring now within the GCC and internally in Saudi Arabia, how they are managing their massive use of the massive oil wealth and how they're managing their resources internally. So first of all, that was the first key finding, was that the future is really uncertain, and it's really important for us to understand this and look a bit deeper into how events may unfold in the future. I guess in terms of key trends and findings in terms of what will drive that future, there were three things that we really looked at. The first one was regional leadership. It is clear from the workshops that we ran with over 300 participants over the life of the scenario project, and from the economic modelling that accompanies the scenarios, that the way in which Saudi Arabia integrates into the region economically will be very important, but also the role that it plays in terms of managing relationships throughout the Gulf and the wider Middle East will be a key determinant of how successful and how stable the region will be in the coming years. So that's the first thing, regional leadership. Secondly, I think that transparency was really underlined as a major factor in terms of ensuring that the economic growth that we see currently in Saudi Arabia and in the wider region continues in a sustainable fashion. The current reforms that are occurring in order to open up markets but also make them more transparent has been very encouraging. However, to reduce the volatility and reduce therefore the uncertainty of what may occur in the region, I think it's very important that we see this trend of transparency continue. And this is not just in terms of economics, but also in terms of political change, in terms of leadership, and in terms of the other relationships in the whole sphere of the Middle East. And then thirdly, the other issue that we see as greatly influential in the future of Saudi Arabia is the social change that is currently going on in the region. This happens on a few different levels. We see in particular the future will bring a shift in youth culture that is already pervading thanks to Saudi Arabia's increasing openness to the world. With telecommunications and technology changes, youth culture will adapt and move potentially more quickly than has been anticipated in the past. And Saudi really needs to come to terms with what this means for their society. Similarly, the participation of women in the workforce is a major issue in terms of ensuring that economic growth is supported by a growing workforce, and in terms of making sure that the benefits of economic growth are shared throughout society. And that's one trend that we looked at in particular. And finally, there's the issue, and this is common to the whole Middle East, of how to deal with migrant populations and migrant labour as a driver of growth. So to sum up, we have a really important job here with the scenarios in terms of exploring just the sheer uncertainty of Saudi Arabia and the wider region. And then coming down in particular, I think looking into the future, we see that regional leadership, the movement towards transparency and coping with social change are going to be the interesting areas to keep an eye on between now and 2025.
How can our members use the scenario reports?
Scenarios in general are very useful for looking at what may happen. I think most businesses have a fixed view, or at least a narrow forecast of what may occur in the future, whereas we at the forum, when we do scenarios, we really cast the net wide and look to explore many different possible futures. So businesses can use this to test their strategies against alternative scenarios they may not have considered. For instance, in the Saudi scenarios, we look at a possible oil price crash, which could fundamentally change the economics in the region, both for local companies and for foreign investors. So testing strategies against that economic modelling will be very useful. Secondly, I think it's possible for members more in the public sphere to have difficult conversations or make difficult conversations more easy with scenarios that explore possibilities of difficult topics, such as women in the workplace, rather than forecasts or more analytical documents, which are perhaps slightly more pejorative. Our scenarios are really about exploring the future and not telling anyone what should happen or what will happen.